Okay, here's a last quiz in 3.4. So this is about the war at home or war on the home front. So there's a couple things I want to show you. Yep, you can't hold it. It's got to stay there. So I'm going to show you first this poster. Nope, it's got to stay there. This is a typical poster that you would see. This is Rosie the Riveter. This is where basically the U.S. government wanted to praise the women who were working in the factories, making, rivets, which is basically like the, connecting the sheet plates, the metal sheet plates for machines and planes and stuff for the war. So all the women went to work in place of the men who were at war, and they wanted to encourage women. They wanted to, praise them for what they did. They wanted to use Rosie as a symbol. There is an actual real Rosie the Riveter. Her name's not Rosie, but it's based off of a real person who did work in the factories. So they used her as a symbol. Also, at home, during World War II, there was something that was called the Bracero program, which was to get Mexicans into the U.S., give them, actual white citizenship. We talked about that a couple of videos ago in regards to racism, especially considering Mexicans. They had programs to get teens working. They had everybody help. They had so many posters that tell you to buy Liberty bonds. You basically buy a bond that is basically like a loan. Government is basically getting a loan from you. You buy a bond, you pay them money, they use it for the war effort, and they pay you back later. They would have posters like "Do your bit, knit socks for the soldiers." Eat less food so that the soldiers can have more food because they're running out of food. So eat less food. Collect metal to use, find the metal that you have, leftover metal, send them to us. We'll use them for the war effort. Have your own gardens so that farmers could not be gardening, but they could be going to war and working in the factories too. So like literally war permeated every aspect of home. It really did. Yeah, I mean, it changed people's lifestyles. I mean, just think of what's going on right now with the coronavirus. It's changing our whole lifestyle. Now imagine if there's a war going on, everybody's lifestyle would be completely changed. So that's definitely what happened. They got the word out for things that they wanted you to do in terms of what we call propaganda, which is basically things that they get you to do to try to like persuade you to do things and change your mind. So here are a ton of World War II propaganda. This is definitely very popular. I want you for U.S. Army. They would always show, this is Hitler, and so this is Germany and Japan right here, showing them looking, demonized. Together we can do it. Jap, you're next. We'll finish the job. This is Make It Pay for That Day, December 7th. You want to get out? Okay. There you go. Now you can. Okay, you can go now. You can wash your hands. Go get a wipe. So this is the propaganda that was going on. Lots of propaganda to get you to do things to help join the war efforts, join the war, support for something, just to get everybody on board with the war. What, honey? No, I gotta do this. Hold on, honey. Okay. In terms of African Americans. Okay, so for African Americans in the war, World War II is kind of seen as the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement. So, they were very widely discriminated, of course. Even after Civil Rights Movement, they were still discriminated against. But it took a lot of fighting to get President Eisenhower to agree to have an executive order that said that discrimination based off race is not allowed in any government facility, factory, anything that's supporting the war. If it's government ran, discrimination is not okay. Now, that doesn't do anything with other businesses, but at least in the government factories, discrimination is not legal. So it was a step in the right direction, right? Blacks and whites were still very much segregated. Jim Crow laws were still very much alive. That was basically, separating the two races for the most part. People were starting to notice in World War II that we were fighting an enemy that discriminated people based on who they were. And then when they start thinking, wait a second, we're fighting them for being bad by doing that, but we're doing the same thing. So people are starting to understand that, hey, this is happening here too. So this is the beginning of the civil rights movement, right? So Truman integrated the military. The Double V campaign, I'm going to show you the little symbol they have for that. Double V campaign, victory at home and victory abroad. Basically, victory over fascism abroad, and victory over discrimination at home. So this is a campaign to get, equality and no more discrimination based off of race at home during World War II. They even planned a march on Washington during World War II. And the organizers are like, hey, Truman, we're going to march unless you stop discrimination. So what's it gonna be? Truman decided, all right, we'll give you, we'll do this. So that's when he eliminated discrimination on just government jobs. And so that was a huge thing, honestly. And then we have more movements in the 50s. 40s was kind of like where the thinking started happening, and 50s is like the main events where the civil rights movement starts kicking off. So that's what that. Next topic. This is one of the bad things that why we're doing school from home is we were going to go on a field trip to the Japanese internment camp here in Utah, Topaz, down by Delta. So we were going to go down there. There was so much stuff I was going to tell you guys with that, but we're not going to be able to. So I'll keep it very short. What you need to know for the quiz. Basically, the whole west side of the country, from California, Nevada, that whole section of the country is called an exclusion zone. So basically, the U.S. government felt like they couldn't trust any Japanese person of Japanese descent. So that includes non-citizens and citizens. They felt like they couldn't trust them. They were too close to military sites and places where they could have intelligence, or at least see what's going on. So basically, every Japanese ancestry person was kicked out of the West, sent to, there's 5 different camps that they were sent to. One in Utah, Colorado, Idaho, just to name some of them. So they were moved to, some people call them internment camps. Technically, they're concentration camps. We call them internment camps to try to be like, oh, but we weren't like Germany. It's true. We didn't kill people. We let them have lives. They had jobs. A lot of people are allowed to leave even shortly after, the camps were established. So it wasn't near the same, but we still took their liberty away. So there's so much more I could tell you, but I won't. It was definitely unconstitutional. There was one guy, his name was Korematsu. He sued the government and said, this is unconstitutional. You have no right. And at the end of that lawsuit, basically the Supreme Court said, yes, it is constitutional. Later on, Supreme Court said that it was unconstitutional, but it was never actually overturned. This could still happen today. There's nothing to prevent the Supreme Court from doing something like this today, or the Supreme Court, the government. Nothing. People hopefully would outrage about it, but there is no set law, and that's probably the worst thing about it, is there is no set law that will eliminate this from being an option in the future. Just so you know that. Okay, last thing is a good thing. It'll be a lot better than the Japanese internment. Oh, I have pictures of the Japanese internment camps to show you. So here's one of the camps. So they're just basically barracks. There's actually some of these barracks after the cap was over in Utah, they actually took them and sold them. There are, when I went down there, I found a bunch of people who had houses that are made from these. You know, they just sold them. They sold them for like $80. So, you know, woohoo. Um, so this is what they look like. That one's Colorado. There's a picture looking down at them. Very bleak. They put them in areas where there's no towns, no cities really close by. They had to always stand in long lines. Most of the time, no, not in that one, but most of the time, if you were to take a picture of them, they're probably going to be smiling. As you can see in this picture, they still were allowed to keep their money, so they were able to make it kind of like a home. They had furniture, they had, you know, all the stuff they were able to purchase in the catalog to get stuff sent to them. So definitely, you know, not like the concentration camps in Germany, but they, you know, they still had things, still not a good thing and very horrible story. Another thing the Americans could say that we are ashamed of. So wartime entertainment. Basically, cinemas were still really great. Movies, people went there a lot because they wanted to get distracted from the war. It was good to get a release from there. And entertainment industry was actually encouraged by the government because they knew that would be a good release for people, so they didn't get too overwhelmed by the war. And so swing music, which is a new form of jazz, became very popular in the 40s, and it even was way more popular in the 50s, but it started in the 40s. It became the most popular type of music, and these became popular. Some of our very favorite comics were made during this time. So Superman, Captain America, right? A lot of the cartoons that were made then looked like, you know, Daredevil battles Hitler. So of course they were including, you know, more. Let's see, there was another one. Oh, right here, Superman is riding. Okay, right. So, you know, they definitely used it to help get people entertained and keep them on the war side. So that is it for the home front in World War II.